All right, brother. Welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast. Thank you for joining me. I've been following you for a little bit of time, and I know you started emailing me. Everyone, this is Joe Quattrucci. Is that how you say it, or how you say it?
Yeah, yeah, Quattruccio was perfect.
Wow, look at me. Shoot, my English teacher would be so happy right now. um, I understand that, man. You've been with Keller Williams for what, five years now, or how long?
Yep, 5 years.
5 years, and you are what do you do with Keller Williams now?
Yeah, so I started off as an agent. I did some investing. I was the vice president of the Kristen Cole Network National Expansion Team for several years. Now my full-time role is the business I created called PC Expansion, providing tools and services for productivity coaches around the Keller Williams business.
That's awesome. So you completely focus. You were vice president for Kristen Cole Network.
I was, yes. Learned a ton about expansion, learned a lot about running a big business, what it means to be a leader, right? She truly is one of the top leaders in our company, has been in the industry for nearly 40 years. So got to learn a lot from her about leadership, the market, tools and systems. And I was able to bring something to the table as far as what I focus on, which is onboarding and training new agents. And so I got a ton of experience working with her. Still happy to say I'm in business with her, just in a slightly different capacity now, where I'm really focused on the PC coaching programs in all of her market centers and market centers beyond just hers.
Yeah, yeah, man. That's a huge opportunity. I think whenever someone I think it's important to understand what your goal is. Map it out, maybe start with the end in mind and figure out. I think the fast way there is who's already done this? Who's that person I need to meet if I don't already know how to do it myself? Who's that person I need to meet that can lay out a roadmap? And what I've found with, people that are more successful or higher up, even people that are same level around where I'm at, they're all willing to share. Like everyone's so like open about their playbook because most people just won't take the action.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's 100% true. And what you're talking about is modeling, right? Which is one of the most fundamental concepts. Whenever you're breaking into a new industry or building a new business, you don't have to reinvent the wheel and figure it all out yourself. In fact, you'd be a fool to try to figure it out all yourself. You might as well learn from the hundreds, if not thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that have gone before you and learn from their life experiences and their life lessons so that you can compound what you learn in the amount of time you learn it and ultimately get to your goal much faster.
Yeah, I love how you use models and compounding because I think all we're trying to do, and when you're trying to build value inside of yourself, is you're just compounding concepts on top of each other so you can stack your value up. And the more concepts you can grab and the more experiences you can learn from other people, the faster you're going to get to your goal. Because the hardest thing I think most people struggle with is just that foundation, is just putting the model in place, having the system in place, having some type of system or process that they just follow repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. Because if they knew what that model or system was, then they can just go back and see, okay, let me audit this. Where was my gap or opportunity I had here that, okay, maybe next time I'm going to do it this way or that way. And how can I do it better or faster next time? Right. And I think that's the whole mindset around it. So I appreciate how your mind works, and this is exciting because I know we talked the other day just for a little bit, so I haven't dug too deep into your mind. So I'm curious, what type of mindset do you have to have for your type of profession where you help PC coaches at Keller Williams kind of grow their business? How's your mindset?
Well, I think you have to start by accepting the idea of being a lifetime student, a lifetime learner, right? Gary Keller would call this a growth mindset. And I've certainly adopted that since being at Keller Williams. And all that really means to me is I'm always learning. Every single day, I'm looking to learn something, whether it be from a book or a podcast, or whether it be from my own failure, right? My own lesson learned, my own difficulty that I learned something from. Being in the role that I'm in, what I love about it is as a leader, it forces me to learn more and to learn faster than all the people around me so that I can continue adding value. Right? If I ever stop learning and growing as an individual, then what do I have to give? What do I have to offer for value to the people that I lead? Right? That runs dry very quickly. So I look at it as not only something that's going to benefit me long term, but quite literally a duty that I have to continue to earn the position that I'm in leading people by continuing to grow, and so that I can pour into them. And here's the thing, man, we all go through challenges, right? We all go through difficulties. We've already been through a lot of difficulties. And so it's not, I don't think mindset is something that you figure out and is like done, right? It's a constant moving target. Every day you wake up, you have, you have the opportunity to ask yourself the question, what is my mindset today? What do I want it to be, right? And preparing for whatever your day might look like. So it's definitely an artistic, constant work in progress.
Yeah, I everything you said, man, like that's the key right there is understanding that you're never going to have the perfect mindset, but just understand that you just have to keep growing and growing and growing and learning, but also learning faster, right? Like being intentional about learning is such a, I feel like it's so underrated. You're like, oh, I'm not in school anymore. Why do I have to learn this? Why do I have to learn scripts or models or systems? Why do I have to learn this? I don't want to sound like a robot, but dude, like you have to keep growing your mind because that's the only way to grow your value, right? People are going to pay you what they believe you're worth, and if you don't grow your mind, I mean, or your skills, you're not going to be worth as much as you might think you are. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's 1,000%.
yeah, that's it, man.
1,000%. Let me just add to that, because I believe that our mindset is directly correlated to our net worth, right? And beyond that, to our happiness, right? And I guess what I mean by that is, there's so many things that we could focus on in our environment, right? And there's plenty of things to find that are wrong in the world. And we have to be careful with what we're focused on and the meanings that we give to things, because those ultimately create our experience or our reality. And we have to look at negative emotions as the call to action that they are, right? So I think about a negative emotion, whether it be anger, frustration, sadness, whatever it might be, as a call to action. That negative emotion is showing up because I need to either change my circumstances by taking action or change my perspective, the way I'm looking at the current situation. And if you allow yourself to sort of remove yourself from your body, if you will, and just ask yourself objectively, why is this emotion coming up right now? And you're able to identify what you need to change, that empowers you to take action. What happens sometimes is we focus on the problem, we focus on the negative emotion, which creates an awful feeling in our body, right? And so then our behavior is in accordance with that negative emotion. So our result is poor, which just feeds the negative thought, and we can end up in this cycle, right? This downward spiral of negative emotion. And so we just have to regain control of that. And again, this is on a daily basis, where we're just bringing awareness to our negative emotions so that we can maintain control of them and ultimately stay focused on the thing that's going to lead us closer to our goal. This is the last thing I'll say, and I'll wrap up. I use the example of like CEOs and super successful people that we all know. Think about Elon Musk. Do you think Elon Musk is the type of person who allows a setback or a difficulty or a challenge to emotionally throw him off? Or the next morning, is he just waking up and getting back after it, right? Building rockets that can go to Mars. So if you allow the negative emotions to take control of you, it will quite literally not only alter your experience, but your activities and your results by maintaining control of it. No matter how much adversity you're up against, no matter how many haters are hating, or no matter how difficult your situation, you can find a way forward. And I think that's the ultimate message.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard this similar thing, right? It's identifying, the emotions that you get triggered by, right? Essentially, they're triggers telling us like, hey, like we don't like this. And it's replacing those triggers with something else. If you can replace those negative thoughts with something else, which you want to have a positive thought, you want to have a grateful thought. Because if you can act in gratitude, everything becomes easier, right? If let's just say we're talking to a prospect, or regardless of the industry, if you're talking to a prospect and you come from negativity or gratitude, I mean, you can feel it in somebody's voice and their emotions, because they're going to know that you actually want to help them, you care about them. So that's why it's important to replace those negative thoughts, right? You have to there's such a level of work there and I think through meditation and journaling and visualization and just these different practices that can help you identify these triggers, right? So that's great. Now I'm curious, how are you? Every day's a battle, every hour is a battle. How are we not allowing that negative emotion to go from 2 minutes to 2 hours to 2 days to 2 months? Like how are you proactively fighting against it?
Yeah, great question. I think it goes back to identifying why is this negative emotion showing up and what is it that I need to process through, right? If it's a reaction to a stimulus in your current environment, you need to either change your current environment or change the way you're looking at your current environment. And in some cases, it's a matter of going a little bit deeper and looking back in your history and saying, what have I not resolved that is now showing up in my environment today that's causing these feelings? And all that means is our brain has a mechanism that is designed to learn from our past experiences, specifically so that we can avoid similar danger in the future, right? That's why we have a memory bank, is to avoid negative situations or potential dangers in the future. And so if you have this negative thought that is constantly reoccurring, or possibly even a negative dream that is constantly reoccurring, that's your unconscious mind's way of saying, hey, you haven't fully addressed this situation yet. And typically all that means is there's still something that you need to learn from that experience to avoid it again in the future. It means your unconscious mind hasn't totally processed what happened, and you haven't slowed down enough to really explore the situation and determine how you want to deal with it the next time you encounter it. And so your conscious mind keeps reminding you of this thing in the back of your mind so that it can be resolved. Now, the good news is, if your unconscious mind is bringing it back up, presenting it to you as a thought, it means you have what it takes to handle that situation, right? You're equipped with the tools to process through and identify, what do I need to learn from this to make sure I avoid this again in the future? What's the lesson I need to learn? And once you learn that lesson, you can let go of the negative emotion so that you're not restricting your body and literally the way you act physiologically to that experience, while retaining the lesson that you learned so that it benefits you in the future.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I especially appreciate the part where you said, dang, what did you say? You said that, what is that thing that keeps showing itself up, right? What keeps popping up in front of you, that you haven't dealt with? And
Yeah,
it's so, you just have to deal with it, right? Like at some point it's like, hey, like if you just deal with this, like sometimes that's just the wall that's in front of you to get to your next destination. It's like your mind's like, hey, I need you to go through this so that your mind, your body, your soul can grow through it, and we can be ready for that next mission of who you want it to be. Because a lot of times we ask, hey, who do I need to become? Right. And obviously, not all of us can be 6'4", jump out of the gym and, play basketball. Right. So sometimes like, all right, who do we need to become mentally, physically, spiritually, health wise, so I can be the person who gets those results. But sometimes
totally.
your body needs to tell you, hey, I need you to grow through this journey so you can become that person. But until you decide that you're going to deal with this, you're going to just keep facing this wall, this same situation. It's just going to keep popping up in different parts of your life. And
Exactly.
we just
Yep.
have to go through it so we can grow through it, man. So that's awesome.
Let me give you, I want to expand on the answer a little bit because I thought you asked a really good question, which is how do we prevent ourselves from falling into these negative habits? And there's another answer I want to give you.
Go for it.
And it goes back to what we focus on and the meaning that we give it, right? So if you want to change the way you're feeling in a given moment, number one, ask yourself about the negative emotion. We already talked about this. What is the lesson I need to learn? How do I want to handle this moving forward? Boom, got it. Once you've decided that, you have to consciously choose to change your focus. What is it that I want to focus on, right? And here would be a simple example. Depressed people, sad people, angry people, do they focus on what they have or don't have?
Yeah,
What they
they
can
focus on
control
what
or
they
what they
don't.
can't
Yeah.
control?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Focus
So
on
so
that.
we can make a conscious effort to focus on what we have, what we can control, what we're grateful for, like you said, and choose to focus on those things. It's not just positive thinking, it's priming our brain to be able to handle whatever shows up in our environment throughout the day. The other thing, part two to this, is your physiology. So the way you use your body has a direct impact on the way that you think and feel. Let me give you a simple example. How
Okay.
would you sit right now if you were super sad and depressed,
Yeah, so
right? Slump over, your head would be
well,
down, your
yep.
shoulders would be forward, right? And I didn't train you or practice, right? We didn't practice that model. Now, if I said sit like you just won the championship game, what do you do with your
Yeah,
body?
then you're
Right? You
up.
sit
Yeah.
up, your shoulders are back, your head is high. So our mind tells our body what to do, But what's interesting is over time, our body then begins to tell our mind what to think. So if you condition, and that's, by the way, that's what we call a habit. That's what we call a habit. And we have emotional habits. And so if you get into the routine of every day you're driving home and you think about something that puts you in a negative state that changes your physiology, then once it becomes a habit, you'll be driving home and automatically revert to that state because it's been programmed. So first of all, we need to just be cognizant of it and be aware of it. Number two, we have to consciously take control. And number three, it's practice, 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 right? Stephen Covey says we can't always control the first thought that comes in our mind, but we can always control the second thought that comes in our mind. So what that means is start being aware of your thoughts, choose to consciously correct your negative or self-limiting thoughts. And over time, what will happen is your unconscious brain will learn your new language patterns. And those first thoughts will end up looking more like the second thoughts over time.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think this is all great. And this reminds me of everything that Joe Dispenza talks about. Like literally everything that you're saying is all straight Joe Dispenza. Because everything that he talks about is true, right? Like for us to know what our future is, we have to plan it. We have to consciously train our mind and our body to become that future vision. We have to have a vision of the future, and we have to live from that future vision of the future, rather than reverting back to that normal habit that you've been doing forever, right? So every time that you're faced with maybe situation A, result B always happens. You're always going to get result B as long as you keep doing action A, right? And your body, just like you said, your body's in control until you decide that your mind's going to be in control. So yeah, that's all amazing stuff. So here's a great question. Obviously we talked about practicing so that way you don't allow 2 minutes of depression or something tough, right? And this also makes me think of The Gap in the Gain. I don't know if you've read this book, but The Gap in the Gain is great. Basically, it says that whenever you go through something rough, take 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes. If you want to be in your sorrows or whatever you want to do, take that 5 minutes and, be that emotion, right? Don't suppress it. Allow it to happen. But the next 10 minutes right after, we need to be happy. We need to understand, what is that lesson I just learned from this trial that I went through? What is the lesson I learned from this failure, right? And let's look at it in a positive light. So take 5 minutes to deal with whatever that emotion is, go through it, grieve. Right after, next 10 minutes, hey, why is this useful in my life? What did I learn here? Because if you don't, you get to, guess what? You get to keep going through that again and again and again, because you never learn from going through that. So that being said, I'm going to ask you this before we move on, because I want to get into this. How regularly are you auditing your emotions, your mindset? How regular are you doing it, on an hourly, a daily, a weekly basis? Like how are you auditing it?
It's a great question, and I'll start by saying this is always a work in progress, and it's a practice. So my intention, and what I do fairly consistently, is I do a morning routine and an evening routine. So at night, it's a reflection upon the day. And oftentimes when I'm reflecting on the day, I'm simply thinking about what were my interactions with people, what went really well that I want to make sure I continue doing, and where are the areas throughout the day where I'd like to improve for the next time. So I'm not judging myself, I'm not being hard on myself, I'm simply observing and discovering the conversations or the interactions I had, and reinforcing to my subconscious mind how I want to show up in the future. In the morning, I more or less focus on how I want to show up as a person that day, right? And this can be as specific or as vague as you want it to be, sort of like a visualization, but I'm thinking about how I want to show up, right? And by creating this mental image, you can, and if you choose, you can allow yourself to feel the emotion in your body, right? Thinking about it is one thing, feeling it in your body is a deeper thing. And if you're able to do that on a regular basis, not only are you priming yourself for success that day, but what you're really doing is you're training yourself to be able to control your emotional state, so that when you're going throughout your day, you are in more control and you can reset as needed. So in addition to mornings and evenings, I would then say, sort of as a blanket statement, throughout the day, I'm constantly monitoring how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, so that if I need to reset, I can, right? And people reset different ways. It might be a walk, right? It might be closing your eyes and taking doing a 5-minute meditation. It might be being outside for a few minutes. Whatever the case may be, if we allow negative emotions to throw us off for the rest of the day, or even for 2 or 3 hours of the day, that's massive progress lost over time, and potentially relationships lost over time, right? Because we all know that sometimes we say and do things that we later regret because we were in a bad mood. So don't allow yourself to make important decisions or have important interactions when you're in that wonky state. Choose before you go into any interaction. And this is a simple exercise, right? Before I go into this meeting or this coaching consultation or this client appointment, why not take just a couple of minutes to think about, what is my ideal outcome here? How do I want the other person leaving the conversation with me? How do I want them to feel? Right? What do I want them to be thinking about or focused on when they leave this conversation? And just by carrying that intention into the conversation, that's how we show up. And you made a great point earlier. You mentioned, your tonality. The words we use are only 7% of communication. 35% of communication is the way we say it. What that means is the tonality that you say it, the excitement or lack thereof, the confidence or lack thereof, the influx in your voice or lack thereof, says more about what you're saying than the actual words say. And so we just need to be very mindful of that and very intentional with that.
Yeah, that's it. And you know what? I'll hit on a few points. So, number one, the biggest point that I want people that are listening to this is intention. The power of intention is totally unmatched. When you are intentional about whatever you want, at the speed in which you get to that destination becomes 5, 10, 15, probably 100 times more likely you hit that destination, because you're intentional about where you want to be. When you have clarity, when you're crystal clear on that vision, right? When you bring emotions, right? It's not just thinking it. When you can feel it, when you can hear it, when you can visualize it, when you bring the more senses that you can bring into a goal, the more likely it's going to happen. And then you pair it up with accountability, it's 100% going to happen. It's sure. 100% going to happen, because another great book, which I'll say it's because, well, actually this one is not it. I was going to say who, not how, but when you know what your why is, the how to that why will show up. When you know what that why is, why you need this to happen, why you need it so bad, you're going to figure out how to do it, because your body, your mind, everything in your world is gonna move around, and it's gonna give you the answer. So it's not about having the answer today, it's about having the intention today. Because if you have the intention, everything else is gonna show up. The other thing I wanted to hit on is something that I taught a class on probably 3 months ago. It was actually one of my favorite classes I ever taught. And it was all about energy. I know that I give myself grace, because I know I don't have the greatest routine. Sometimes I can coach on it all day long. But having the morning routine, right? Having the night routine, and then having the day routine, right? So if you have a night routine, right? Go to bed. Don't eat too early, too much later before you're gonna go to bed, right? Having taking good foods before you go to sleep, right? Not having a freaking 10-pound burrito, not getting drunk before you go to sleep, maybe having your intentions written down before you go to sleep. So, and having a controlled environment, right? So that way the next day, okay, I already know what I'm doing. I already have momentum, because the night before I went to sleep early and I did everything I needed to. Then I got up early, I worked out, maybe I had a protein shake or I had something healthy in the morning. I'm listening to music that puts me into a state of gratitude. Maybe if you're religious, you're listening to worship music. You're not like listening to something, profound, right? You're listening to something that's going to put you into that state of gratitude. And now your day is just rolling, because you had the nighttime before you started the momentum. The daytime, you kept the momentum going. It's like a train, right? Going in circles. And then during the day, you're not watching the news. You're not feeding into all this drama and negativity into the world. So now you're really controlling your environment. Because something else you said earlier on was your environment. You're a product of your environment. And the greatest example I use is wine, right? You can grow wine anywhere in the world, but where you grow it is how much it's worth. Same thing with anybody in the business world. If you put yourself next to billionaires, you're going to become a billionaire. If you put yourself next to, people in debt, you're going to be in debt. So whoever you are in business with, that's who you're going to become, right? So it's just a matter of, who do I want to become? Oh, I want to be a billionaire. Okay, great. Who is it that I need to meet so I can work my way up there? And then there you go, become a billionaire. It really is your environment, and that's what I think. Anyways, done with my little rant. I could go on and on about this all day long. So I wanted to get into this. You are a specialist in onboarding, right? And so what's your niche again?
Yeah, so my niche is working with teams and brokerages to onboard and train agents to get them into
Okay.
production as quickly as possible.
So, okay,
Yeah, go
got you.
ahead.
So your niche is for teams and basically coaching programs. You onboard them and you get them into production as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, yeah, in a nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I'm,
what's the
I'm
strategy
a,
behind that? Or how are you so good at it?
well, I spent 10 years in the military, and what the military taught me was that there is a way at scale to be able to basically train Marines, right?
I was
You
in
go
the
through
Marines
boot
too.
camp. Yeah, yeah. And so, right. And so you go through boot camp to become a basically trained Marine, and then you go to your school where you actually learn your skill or your trade.
Yeah.
I was in air traffic control in the military, so that came with an enormous amount of training. And just by, I guess, experiencing that training myself, it made a lot of sense to me, right? And later on in my career, I ended up being responsible for all of the training and certification of air traffic controllers at my facility. And so by having that responsibility, I was overseeing training plans and individual Marines' abilities to get through that training plan in the allotted amount of time to become a certified controller. Now, when I got into real estate, being a very orderly person, right? A lot of standard operating procedures and checklists. I got into real estate and I realized a lot of that didn't exist. If it did exist, it was not necessarily accessible or understandable by a brand new agent. So all I did was start learning from the people around me and from Keller Williams as a whole. And I just started chunking down everything that I was being provided in a very simple way so that a new agent knew exactly what to do the first week, the second week, the third week, the first month, the second month, the third month, what activities and why they're doing the activities that we're asking them to do. And so with that confidence and with that sort of roadmap, we're able to guide more agents into production successfully. In a nutshell, all I'm saying is real estate is one of the only industries that does not have a standardized way of training their newly licensed agents to be productive, and I intend to change that.
It's so funny that you say that. I've been thinking the same freaking thing. Just because like I'm like McDonald's, right? If I look at a McDonald's, right? Someone could literally like everything is completely standardized. That's why they're saying that, oh, actually, I think it's Walmart actually. Walmart is gonna have completely automated, no humans in 3 years, right? Obviously, they still need humans to stock the shelves, I'm sure. But outside of that, like everything is completely organized. So you using the boot camp to Marine Corps combat training to your school makes a lot of sense, right? It's just okay, here, this is the foundation of a one deal or two deal agent, and then this is where we pile on, this is where we pile on, this is where we pile on. But first, I need you to have these fundamentals, this foundation, and this is what you need to know. And if you decide you're going to go through this, perfect. I promise you, as long as you do this, you're gonna get these results. So, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And real estate is exactly that. We're not like literally the person that comes up with, which there's only a few that probably execute at a high level, but it's so few, such a small percentage of the industry that actually does it. That's why I think mega teams are going to be the way of the future. I think that mega teams are going to take over. I see the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I think that it's not about, hey, there's 100,000 Keller Williams everywhere. It's going to be, hey, there's Dan Beard Group, Kyle Whistle. It's just, you know, Kristen Cole network. It's just going to be a bunch of expansions everywhere, and I think that's going to rule the whole industry.
Right. Well, first of all, I agree with that. And then you think about those teams and those brokerages, how much manpower, time, and energy does it take to onboard and train agents? Well, the answer is when you're doing it sporadically and differently for every agent, it takes an enormous amount of time because ultimately you're just handholding them one-on-one or in small groups over some undetermined amount of time in hopes that at some point they become productive. There's no real benchmarking. And so what my program does is say, here's what we know you need to know to be successful, no matter what your niche is going to be, no matter what your goals are. Here's what we know you need to know to be basically successful. So by the end of 90 days, you're going to be a basically trained agent that's basically equipped to go on an appointment and sign a client. What my system also does is it provides leadership, coaches, director of sales, a sort of filtering system. So that if an agent comes into the team or brokerage and is choosing not to participate, is choosing not to train, most importantly, is choosing not to do the activities that are going to produce income, we have a standardized, objective way of reporting and measuring those activities so that we can create incentives and takeaways for agents completing our training program. An incentive might be a higher quality lead. A takeaway might be you're no longer part of this team, or you're on a different commission split, or you don't get leads at all until you complete the training. And so I'm empowering teams and brokerages to create these incentives and takeaways by creating some semblance of a system and some sort of objective reporting system to get these agents basically trained.
Gotcha. Now, this is a question I have. So how, or I guess inside of your program, obviously there's the 30, 60, 90, I'm guessing, right? 30, 60, 90 is what you have.
Absolutely.
What does that initial, or what does that ideal initial conversation look like when you're trying to set expectations for onboarding? Like, hey, this is a new agent iPhone or Iron Man, whatever. He's joining the brokerage. He wants to join maybe a team or a PC program or some type of coaching program. Well, what does that conversation look like? So how does he know, like, these are the expectations and standards, and if you don't hit them, we take this away?
Great question. So you're sort of saying it in the question, which is we need to have a conversation around expectations. Now, I did a little bit of research, and National Association of Realtors says that 87% of real estate agents quit within 5 years. The top three reasons are, number one, unrealistic expectations coming into the business. They don't know what the job is. Lead generation, what are you talking about, right? So number one, we have to be very upfront with them about what the job is, what to expect in the day in the life of a real estate agent. This is a sales position, and you have nobody to bring through a transaction until you go find them. That needs to be number one, because some people will self-select out right at that point. The number two reason that people quit real estate is a lack of guidance or mentorship. They don't know what to do, and they don't know what order to do it. That's why what I'm suggesting as leaders and brokerages, and what my company provides, is a bite-sized chunk, sequentially ordered system with daily action items and customizable resources to get the agent into production quickly. That is the roadmap. And then you supplement that with one-on-one coaching, and that's where the magic really happens. The third reason that people say that they quit real estate is fear. So we need to, number one, address fear up front, what it is and how to overcome it. The more artistically and the higher level of a coach you are, the more able you are of positively influencing human thought and behavior. And so what a really good coach does is ask really good questions to help a client self-discover their own fears, the reason for those fears, and most importantly, ways to overcome those fears, right? A new perspective to look through the situation with, or a new action to take that would help you overcome that fear. And oftentimes, simply association with that fear is how people overcome it, right? So you take the smallest activity or effort that that individual can do reasonably well, and you focus them on that, and then you increase that over time. So I think a mistake that we make sometimes is, hey, welcome to real estate. You have to call 100 people every single day if you want to succeed in real estate. Well, if I've never made a phone call before, I'm self-selecting out almost immediately. I'd rather you make a phone call, and then tomorrow make two, then tomorrow make three, then tomorrow make four, and over time, I think that we have a much better chance of increasing their abilities to get into production. Now, some people could probably do 100, absolutely. And some people are never going to be willing to make the first call. I'd rather figure that out sooner than later.
Yeah, I I can appreciate that. So, this is a question that I didn't realize this was an issue until I became a coach and a team leader. Um, how are you, I guess, quickly determining, and I don't say quickly, but how do we determine what our agents' pillars should be in their business based off of their personality, right? Like for me, I didn't make phone calls before I got into real estate, so I didn't know if I was going to be good at it or not. I know that I gave effort for it and I got better at it. But I know for some agents, they won't pick up the phone, but there's agents who don't pick up the phone, but they're wildly successful, right? Because their pillar of the business isn't phone calls, right? Or like it's not cold calling expireds and FISBOs or circle prospecting. Maybe it's cold calling their SOI or whatever it is. How are you? What is the process of determining an agent's pillars that we think they're going to be good at?
So I'm gonna answer a little bit more than that question.
Go for it.
So my philosophy and my approach to this whole conversation is as follows. Step one, we have to help the agent create a very compelling future for themselves. They need to be able to broadcast out 5 to 10 years and in their imagination, create an ideal outcome. This is a move toward goal that draws us to it over time. If we don't have a compelling future, it's hard to overcome challenges. It's hard to move outside your comfort zone if you don't have a clear picture as to why you're doing it. So that's step one, compelling future. Step two is we have to reverse engineer that compelling future into a 1 year goal and turn that 1 year goal into an economic model. The reason I say this is because we're turning something that's abstract and artistic into something that's quantifiable that we can track. So I turn a someday vision into a 1 year goal that we turn into an economic model. Model might be, I want to earn $100,000 a year. In order to do that, I need to close 24 transactions. We're going to reverse engineer that into, well, how many appointments do you need to set to get those 24 transactions based on a 50% conversion rate or a 75% conversion rate? I do the math with them, and I choose to focus the agent's attention on appointment set. Not even, for some agents, they need to focus on contacts made. I'd rather focus on appointment set. It's sort of the next step up. But it's a smaller, more accessible number than total closed units. So I focus on appointments. Then we get into the conversation about what lead generation are you going to do to set that number of appointments. I give basic guidance as to my suggestions, but to your point, we need to be having one-on-ones because not every agent is the same. Where I would suggest that they're all the same is that everybody should be doing something with their SOI, because even if you don't have a big network in your local state, you have a big network wherever you grew up, and you can get referrals and receive referrals. So number one is always SOI, and we need to make sure our people are most comfortable with SOI because that's where they're going to convert the most business statistically. In addition to that, I think every agent should be using social media because it's a free online billboard to promote yourself and your business. It's a way to capture mind share. So regardless of how you want to focus your lead gen efforts, I think it always starts with SOI in social media. From there, it really becomes the option of the agent based on their strengths, their desires, and what they're most willing to do. Now, we may not always love every type of lead generation that we do. So I'm not suggesting that the agent has to fall in love with open houses, but they need to be willing to do an open house at a high level and do the activities around it. I also love to ask the agent the question, what is something you're doing right now that you really love doing, that you're going to continue doing regardless of real estate? And how can you do it with more people? Right? So I used to go to a CrossFit gym. I got several of my first transactions from the CrossFit gym. Now I was going to go work out regardless of if I got a real estate deal from it. So I was always there. I was always happy, and I loved going to the gym. Then I started getting deals from it. So what kind of activities do you enjoy doing that you can simply do with a wider group of people with more intentionality to start getting business from that? Now we're already up to 3 or 4 lead gen levers. We really only need to find 1 or 2, either cold calling or circle prospecting, geographic farming, one more sort of avenue to take in addition to those other 3 or 4 that I mentioned. And that's what I would get the agent focused on.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. You start with your big why. Let's tie some financial goals to that big why. Let's set up an action plan. Let's figure out what our KPIs need to be. And then under there, okay, what pillars are going to make sure that we hit these KPIs? Because whether you're cold calling, social media, it doesn't matter what you're doing. But
yeah,
if we need to hit appointment a day, fantastic. You better be on social media DMing a million people if that's the route you want to take.
exactly.
So yeah, either The cool thing about it is that once you have a nice lead pillar set up, like let's just say it's social media. Well, I know that I'm gonna get 12 deals from social media every year. Okay, fantastic. I know I'm gonna get 12 from my SOI. Great. I know that's set up. So maybe next quarter I'm gonna add this pillar. And from this pillar, based off these automated actions, hey, there comes another 6 deals. And maybe I'll add another one the next quarter, or maybe I'll just double down on the ones I'm going to do and get them to their highest efficient level. And maybe my highest efficient level is here. And then based off systems, I can just go ahead and add another 6 deals because I can get this running in automation. Like right now, one of my pillars is online leads with Facebook. And like literally it goes by itself because lead comes in, text messages are going out, calls are going out, and based on stage, they're going to get a text message, emails, everything's going to go out to them anyways. And they're just replying. So I'll see replies all day long. Oh, cool. They're ready to go. Okay, let me reply to them. And
Yep.
I'm touching 200-300 people a day automatically. So my time invested in there is next to nothing. It's just whenever they decide to reply. And I'll probably get 20-30 contacts a day just from that. So now I can spend my time. Okay, maybe I want to build out maybe my other pillar is going to be I'm going to promote new home builds for 90 days and I'm going to show every single day a new home tour. And maybe that's going to bring me in 6 deals, and it's just determining how much output equals an outcome.
Yeah,
So
I like to use the
yeah.
4 Ps, right? Pause, pivot, pull the plug, power up. And that's
Mhm.
how what you're describing is you're going to take massive action, analyze the results, which means tracking the results, and then
Yep.
adapting your approach. The only way you can adapt your approach is if you're tracking your results. And when you're looking at those results, you're saying, do I want to pause and do more research? Do I want to pivot and adjust this strategy? Do I want to pull the plug and just cancel this because it's not working? Or do I
Yep.
want to power up and put all my energy into something that I know is going to work? And so those 4 Ps are a great filtering system as you're analyzing those lead gen levers.
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. And then once you have your lead gen levers, it's like, all right, double down on the
Exactly.
ones that work, maybe add a
Exactly.
different one, and then you're just gonna keep fine tuning it, right? And then eventually, all right, well, I want to grow this out. So maybe I know if I bring on every 3 agents out of 10, I know they're gonna do this amount of work, and then it's just multiplying. So it's cool stuff, bro. Um,
Exactly.
so man, I think I thought I had a question for you. And I totally forgot what it was. I'm like I'm the worst person ever.
That's okay.
Oh,
I can
I
volunteer some information if you want.
yeah, no, for sure. Wait, so I'm curious, dude. So you were in the Marine Corps. I didn't know you were in the Marine Corps, dude.
Yeah,
Um,
10 years.
yeah, so I was in for 6. Were you a Hollywood Marine or were you on the
Paris Island.
Paris? Oh God. Oh, that
So
sounds
you were obviously
terrible.
Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah, I was Hollywood. Well, I would hate to be around all the bugs and dealing with all that crap, man. That sounds disgusting.
It was awful.
Um, so very cool, huh? So you stayed for 10 years and then why'd you get out?
I knew I wanted to work in an industry where I would be rewarded in direct proportion to my efforts. And
Yes. Yes.
in addition to that, I would say I conceptually understand the benefit of investing in real estate, and I hope every one of your listeners is already buying real estate for themselves or at least considering it in the near future, because it is, to me, the most obvious way to build wealth and a legacy for my family. And those 2 reasons are absolutely why I got into real estate.
Love it, bro. Yeah. I wish I would have known the power of real estate back when I was a junior Marine, bro.
Yeah.
I would have freaking bought. I would be living in a way more expensive house than I live in now.
Right.
I would have definitely more rentals. However, like it's never too late, right? So, I want to pivot to this question. So, I've had different answers for different people, and I'm
Okay.
curious, what do you coach on? And obviously, it depends on the level of agent. Do you coach on? Because what you just said was you wanted to get paid off of results, meaning that regardless if you took 2 hours or 16 hours, right? Like in the Marine Corps, we'd be doing some dumb stuff where we'd be there for 16 hours for no reason. Um, and you could probably finish those tasks in 2 hours. So do you coach checklists or do you coach time block? What's more important?
Do I have to choose from one of those 2 options, or can I?
Whatever, man. I don't know. You tell me.
Here's what I would say. there's a model that I've been teaching a lot lately, which is story, state, and strategy. We
Yeah,
typically start with strategy as coaches and clients, but strategy is the least important out of the three.
yeah,
Because if I was coaching you and you were doing a strategy and it's not working, what do?
yeah. You're gonna reevaluate it.
You adjust the strategy. You adjust the
Yeah.
strategy. It's the classic Thomas Edison with the light bulb, right? You just keep adjusting until you get the result you want. I don't think the strategy is where most people need to focus. I think their story that creates their state is where they need to be thinking. What I mean by that is if your strategy is door knocking, but when you actually go door knocking, you feel like you're bothering people. You feel like a nuisance. You feel like you're not that confident in the activity. That feeling in your body is created by whatever you're focused on, right? Whatever story you're telling yourself based on past experiences, based on whatever from your upbringing, right? So if you're focused on when somebody knocked on my door as a child, they were a salesperson and they were selling things I didn't want. And I associate that feeling in my body with me going and door knocking. Even if I can get myself to go through the motions of door knocking, I'm not really doing it because the story is creating a feeling that's creating my behavior. And so my angle here is if I can help identify, and this would be a question I would literally ask a coaching client. You're going door knocking. How would you have to show up to be at your best peak performance when door knocking? Like, describe to me what that would look like. What would you have to focus on and think about to be in that state so that when you don't go and door knock, right? Like you said earlier, your tonality, your physiology are showing up with the words that you're saying. And in order for you to feel that way, what would you have to focus on and think about?
Mm-hmm.
Because I truly believe, Richard, that where there's a will, there's a way, right? If people are desperate enough, they will find a solution. If people are compelled enough, they will find a solution. So I actually don't spend as much time as you would think on strategy because I believe, and this is even true for new agents, they almost always know the answer. They just don't want to do it because of how they feel, which is based on what they're thinking. If I can help people make a 1% change to what they're focused on, and that creates a change in their physiological body, they will take a new action. And so that's the approach I take to coaching. And this is all very much born in the neurolinguistic programming, right? NLP,
NLP. Yep.
and you mentioned Joe Dispenza. So not to go on a ramble here, but I'm a trainer of NLP, so I've done fairly extensive training around it. And NLP in a nutshell is simply understanding your own internal communication that leads to external communication. What Joe Dispenza taught me about energy, the quantum field, and meditation helped me understand why NLP is NLP. It's like a deeper level of understanding. And so for me, that's the angle I take because it's the angle that's most interesting to me. I apply it in my own life and I am able to help people make minor adjustments to their behavior by reverse engineering their state and their story.
Yeah, I love it, man. I was taught this similar thing that you just said in a different format, which I'm sure some people have, and it's called be do have, right? And for those of you listening that don't know what that is, it's who must I be, and what would that person do so I can have the result, right? That's essentially all it is, right? Your story, right? If I become that story, I will do because I'll be in that state and I'll have the strategy that I need to have, right? Because if you believe that you're going to go door knocking and you believe in your heart that you're really, really helping somebody, the way that you come off with the questions that you ask, the type of leadership, the way you show up to that door, it's going to be a 360-degree, change. You're going to be completely someone else. And that's the goal. You got to always come from contribution, right? I mean, that's the Keller Williams thing. Another thing that I'm surprised you didn't say, I thought you were going to say it was, what you focus on expands. And it's so true. Whatever you focus on expands. So, man, I gotta have you back because I still had so many other things. And I know that me and you both can ramble a little bit, but I think it's all good information. And I think there's a lot of value there. So that being said, before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you, what book are you reading or that you would recommend?
So I don't know if this is against the rules. I'm gonna give you two. You mentioned Joe Dispenza. I'm literally currently reading "Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself" by Joe Dispenza.
Love it.
I highly recommend. Maybe even a good book. And this is my second book recommendation.
Yeah.
This is one that I learned at Keller Williams, and I think for me, I always knew I wanted to become somebody who meditates, but I had zero experience. There was sort of this negative connotation around it, like right in the environment I grew up in. Um, and I didn't really even know what meditation was until I read this book called The Untethered Soul. Now, The Untethered Soul doesn't teach you meditation, but it gives you a perspective on thinking about your conscious mind. And for me, The Untethered Soul is one of those books that when I was done reading it, I literally started back at the beginning because I was so infatuated and it was so relatable to my experience of life. And so like I'll admit the book, the cover is kind of weird. It's like a horse running on the beach, and it like has nothing to do with the book itself. So when you look at it on Amazon, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Highly recommend for $12. It's a super easy read. It's a fairly short book. I would definitely recommend The Untethered Soul.
Awesome, man. And now what is either a quote or a theme that you're working on in your life right now? For example, me right now is do not allow my actions to betray my words.
I like that. Okay. This actually is goes along the same lines. So the quote that I've been thinking about a lot lately and doing my best to implement is I'd rather have an 80% plan that's 100% executed than a 100% plan that's 80% executed.
I love
Right?
it.
The idea here is yes, we need to make a plan, but more than the plan, we need to go out there and get into action.
Yeah, yeah. Growing. I think just growing through the chaos of experience is so important, and just actually just implementing. If you can implement and execute, you can have something to look back and reflect on that you can improve upon. So I love it,
Exactly.
man. So before I, hit the stop button, anything else you want to share?
I would just say thanks for having me on. I appreciate this time. I'd be happy to come back. I loved our conversation and always available for more.
I love it. All right, man. Thanks.
Take care.